You open a strawberry yogurt, pink, smooth, appetizing. You pour a glass of Coca-Cola, deep red, almost ruby. You pop a candy into your mouth, bright crimson, glossy. You see this color every single day. It's in your fridge, in your bag, on your desk. But almost nobody knows where it actually comes from. On the label, it says simply E120, or natural carmine, or carminic acid. Manufacturers aren't hiding anything. They just know that most people won't bother looking it up. We did. And what we found took us to ancient cactus fields, stone-dry hillsides, and industrial extraction plants on the other side of the world. What you're about to see isn't synthetic chemistry. It isn't made in a lab. It's one of the oldest red pigments in human history. And it's alive. Meet Dactylopius coccus, a small insect, about 5 millimeters long. It lives exclusively on prickly pear cacti and feeds on their sap. It barely moves. The female, and it is specifically the female, accumulates carminic acid inside her body. It's her defense mechanism. The compound is bitter and toxic to most predators, but not to us. The main farming regions are Peru, Mexico, and the Canary Islands. Peru alone accounts for roughly 85% of the world's cochineal supply. It's a billion-dollar industry that almost no one ever sees. The plantations look like this: long, even rows of prickly pear cacti on rocky, sun-baked slopes, dry climate, intense sunlight, and tucked into the crevices of each cactus pad, colonies of insects barely visible to the naked eye. Every 3 to 4 months, it's harvest time. Workers move along the rows with stiff brushes or wooden scrapers, carefully dislodging the insects into collection containers. No machines, no automation, pure manual labor. 1 hectare of plantation can yield between 400 and 700 kilograms of cochineal. That sounds like a lot, but to produce just 1 kilogram of finished dye, you need to process approximately 70,000 individual insects. Cochineal is the foundation, but producing pure carminic acid and its derivatives requires additional inputs. Ammonia and aluminum salts are used to precipitate the pigment out of solution. The aluminum is what transforms raw carminic acid into stable carmine, a dye that won't fade and won't break down under heat. Water, highly purified, demineralized. The process is sensitive to even trace impurities. Acids and alkalis are used to control pH at every stage, and this matters more than you might think. The color of carmine actually shifts depending on acidity. In an acidic environment, it appears orange-red. In an alkaline one, it turns deep purple. Manufacturers use this intentionally. The same dye produces different shades in different products, from the pale pink of a fruit yogurt to the dark red of a processed meat casing. One dye, many colors, controlled entirely by chemistry. The harvested insects arrive at the processing plant. The first step is drying. The cochineal is spread across large flat trays and dried, either in the sun, in traditional operations, or in industrial drying chambers at around 60 degrees Celsius. The insects lose all their moisture and become a hard, grayish-brown mass. Nothing about it looks like a living creature anymore. The dried material is then ground into a fine powder. At this stage, it resembles ordinary dust with a faint reddish tint. Next comes extraction. The powder is loaded into large industrial reactors filled with hot water. At around 90 degrees Celsius, the carminic acid migrates from the powder into the solution. The reactors run continuously, agitating the mixture for several hours. The resulting liquid is filtered, removing chitin residue and insoluble particles. What remains is a dark reddish-brown liquid with a high concentration of carminic acid. Now, precipitation. Aluminum salts are introduced and the pH is carefully adjusted. Carmine begins to fall out of solution. You can watch it happen in real time. The liquid visibly clears as a vivid red mass accumulates at the bottom of the reactor. The sediment is separated in centrifuges and filters, washed, filtered again. Then, a final drying stage. The output, pure carmine, a deep red powder or a concentrated liquid solution. In this form, it leaves the factory and ships to food manufacturers, cosmetics companies, and pharmaceutical producers around the world. And the clients are not small, obscure brands. We're talking about Nestle, Danone, Yoplait, Tropicana, Campari. E120 is used in sausages, canned fish, ice cream, gummy candies, fruit juices, alcoholic beverages, and in dozens of cosmetics, from lipstick to blush. Carmine is one of the few food colorings subject to strict international standards at every step. In the laboratory, technicians measure carminic acid concentration. For food-grade applications, the minimum is 50%. Cosmetic-grade standards may differ. Microbiological testing is mandatory. Despite the high-temperature processing, every batch is screened for pathogens before it leaves the facility. Spectrophotometry confirms the precise shade. Finished carmine must fall within a tightly defined color range. Any deviation sends the batch back for reprocessing. Each lot is also tested for heavy metals and pesticide residues. Cactus plantations are sometimes treated with agricultural chemicals, and residue control is critical for approval on EU and US markets. Both the European Food Safety Authority and the US FDA classify E120 as a safe additive. However, in several countries, manufacturers are legally required to declare its presence separately on packaging, because a small percentage of consumers experience allergic reactions, particularly those sensitive to aspirin. The science is solid, the approval is global, but transparency is still selectively applied. Finished carmine is sealed into airtight containers, powder or liquid, and shipped worldwide. The main routes run from Peru to Europe and Asia. From the Canary Islands, it goes directly into the European supply chain. Large food corporations buy carmine by the ton. Liquid form is easier to dose on high-speed production lines. Smaller producers prefer powder. Longer shelf life, simpler transport. At a yogurt factory, the dye is added during the mixing stage. A few grams per several hundred kilograms of product. That's all it takes to turn the entire batch evenly pink. At a confectionery plant, carmine is blended into gelatin mass or glaze. In meat processing, it goes into brines and marinades to give the finished product its appealing color. From a cactus plantation in the Andean highlands to your grocery shelf. The full cycle takes, on average, 3 to 6 months. Growing, harvesting, extraction, logistics, manufacturing, distribution. 6 months. 70,000 insects per kilogram. And a few grams in your breakfast. So, you open the yogurt again. Strawberry, pink, E120 on the label. Now you know exactly what that means. Roughly 70,000 dried insects went through extraction, filtration, and drying before becoming the few grams of color that made your breakfast look this way. This isn't synthetic. This isn't a lab creation. Carmine is one of the oldest natural dyes in recorded history. The Aztecs used it centuries before the food industry existed. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in Mexico in the 16th century, they shipped it back to Europe as a strategic commodity, alongside gold and silver. Today, E120 appears in thousands of products, and it's chosen precisely because it's natural, more tolerated by the human body than synthetic red dyes, and approved in markets where artificial alternatives are banned. But here's the question we'll leave with you. When a label says natural coloring, does that make you feel better about what you're eating? Or now that you know exactly what natural means in this case, do you think about it differently? Leave your answer in the comments. And if this is the kind of thing you want to see more of, you know what to do.